Shoot, shoot, boom, 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 shoot, boom, 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 boom. Sorry. Having little potato chips. Quick snack. Welcome to Every Rock Has a Story for today. My story for today is actually about what makes potato chips taste so good. You know what's in potato chips that makes them taste so good? It says right on the back. There's a lot of it. Let's see. Salt. Potatoes, oil, and salt. There's a lot of salt in potato chips. And it's that salt which makes them taste good. I got my salt and pepper shaker right here. I'll put that right up front. Here's some salt. That's what goes right in the salt and pepper shaker. Why do you think I'm talking about salt today? Because salt is a mineral. Yeah, the salt that you buy at the store that goes in to your salt and pepper shaker, and the salt they use to make things like potato chips taste so good, is a mineral. It comes from the earth. It's real. It's a beautiful mineral called halite. We just usually call it salt, but halite is sodium chloride. It's the most common type of salt. And that's pretty much exactly what you find in here, in your salt shaker, and in the bag of potato chips that taste so good. But halite is beautiful because the crystals are tiny little cubes, clear or white or sometimes colorful, tiny little cubes. If you poured this out and looked at it with a magnifying glass, you could see that they're actually tiny little cube-shaped crystals. But I do have some other salt that I can show you, which is a little bit bigger. It's these two right here. Let me bring these a little bit closer. Maybe you can see that cube shape in that one. Or maybe this one here will show that. There, you can kind of see that cube shape there. Halite crystals, real salt crystals, are beautiful. Do you know where I got these big pieces of salt? These big pieces of salt came from an interesting place. I found them this winter. You know where they were? They were on the street. Tons of these guys. They were everywhere. I collected a whole bunch. This is the same salt that they sprinkle on the roads in the snowy, icy winter to melt the ice, to make it safe to drive and to walk. Road salt is the same salt that they put in the salt you buy at the store, that you put in your salt shaker, and that they put into chips, which makes them taste so good. But you might be wondering, where does salt come from in nature? It turns out that to get salt, you need really hot, really dry conditions. And you need a closed basin of water. Could be a very small puddle, could be a pond or a lake, or even an ancient ocean. And what happens is that salt water, just like the ocean water is salty, has all that sodium and some potassium in it. Remember, that sodium mostly came from feldspars. But that sodium is dissolved in that salt water. But if it gets hot and dry, that water, what happens to the water? It evaporates. It turns into gas and steam and goes up into the atmosphere. And as that water evaporates in a closed basin, What gets left behind is just the salt. You can find places on the earth today that are very hot and very dry where salt is forming right before our eyes. Can you think of any places like that? How about the Great Salt Lake in Utah? How about the Salton Sea in California? How about the Dead Sea in Israel? Because salty, briny waters are very hard for things to live in. Now, a long time ago, there were periods of the earth, especially the Triassic, which were very hot and especially dry, very dry. And you can find ancient basins from the Triassic, 250 million years old, that had huge accumulations of salt, halite salt, and they got buried, and they are thick deposits of salt that we can mine today. Here is an even bigger sample of a salt crystal, and I'll bring this one closer to you. There's a real salt crystal. You can now see maybe a little bit better that cube shape. There you can see that nice cube shape that those crystals have. Salt, beautiful crystals of halite salt. And so we actually mine the halite salt here from those ancient evaporated salt deposits and from those modern day salt deposits like the Great Salt Lake. We mine this salt to make road salt that we sprinkle on the roads in winter to melt the ice. We put that salt into the stuff we buy at the supermarket, that we put in our salt shakers, and it ends up in the potato chips, which makes them taste so good. The other place where you can find salt is in a salt farm. Yeah, I said a salt farm. There are places in the world today that are hot and dry enough that they gather seawater, salty water, and they close it off, build a little wall to make a closed basin, and they wait for the water to evaporate and the salt to deposit. That's called a salt farm. And they collect those salts and they send those on as well. So the story of salt is a pretty interesting one. It's something that we use in our roads, salt, potato chips. But it's also something that tells a story of ancient, hot, and especially dry times, like the dry Triassic. The very, very first dinosaurs were trying to get hold in those dry times of the Triassic, where all these salty, murky, briny basins were forming. That's my story today of salt. I hope you liked it, and I hope that I can have one more potato chip before this ends. Bye-bye.